Welcome, everyone. Thank you to all of you for making the time. Today, we're going to be discussing how Medtronic acts on NPS feedback. So I'll just begin by quickly introducing myself, and then I will let Alban also introduce himself before we dive into the agenda. My name is Liv. I'm a senior account director here at Relative Insights. Been with the company for a number of years and work with lots of our lovely customers to really drive value out of the platform. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, but I will hand the reins over to Alban to introduce himself as well.
Thank you, Liv. So my name is Alban. I'm with Medtronic Diabetes EMEA for 8+ years. Always in charge of business insights, and that's actually a department that has evolved quite across time. And what we're going to talk about today is, I would say, at the tip of our journey in terms of innovating in terms of business insights. So I'm very happy to share with Liv.
Wonderful, thanks so much. So in terms of an agenda, what we'll do is just begin by giving you a brief overview of who Relative Insight are and what we do. I realise some of you may be familiar with what we do, but some of you may be less familiar. So we'll just give you a brief overview to start. And then I will hand over to Alban, who can take you through how Medtronic specifically have been using Relative Insight to look at NPS feedback data. We'll then open the floor up to a Q&A after, and hopefully we should have a good amount of time to answer all of your lovely questions. So in terms of who we are and what we do, Relative Insights actually originated in the law enforcement world, where we were comparing and using comparative technology to look at text data to detect criminals online. So comparing text, so from somewhere like a school intranet chat potentially, and looking at young people, verified young people versus suspicious people, potentially masquerading criminals. And through this comparison, we were able to identify key differences and nuances where a 14-year-old girl wasn't actually a 14-year-old girl, but a 40-year-old man pretending and masquerading to be someone that they're not. And so we have now, over the past few years, applied this technique to the business world through consumer analytics and customer experience. So we essentially help customer contact and experience teams use this comparative methodology to understand the why behind movements in scores in things like NPS and CSAT surveys. But we can also look at things like social media CX. Maybe we want to look at reviews, or maybe even customer service. So I'm just going to skip so that you can see the customer service survey first. There we go. So scenario, you are faced with a customer survey. So you can see here, this is a very typical example of something that we would work with. And you can see at the top, you're asked to rate from 0 to 10, how likely you are to recommend a specific product to your friends and family. And then you are asked to state why you gave that response. So when it comes to that open-ended response, what do you do with it? You could maybe do nothing. So you just have that score so you can see what's going up and down. Maybe you could manually read and classify some of those open-ended responses. It might be time-consuming to do that, especially if you're seeing, upwards of hundreds and thousands of incoming surveys on a daily basis. Do you want that to take over your life? Probably not, is my guess. Maybe you could use ChatGPT. So through that, you could see some overarching key themes, but do you have any metrics behind those themes? Do you have any evidence as to why those themes are coming up? No, probably not. Or you could use Relative Insight. So as most of you will probably agree, CSAT and NPS scoring has definitely become the standard in recent years. However, the challenge is it's very, very easy to see that a CSAT or NPS score is rising or whether it's falling, but you don't necessarily know why it's happening. And so you go to your stakeholders internally, for example, and you can say, like, NPS is falling in this specific region, but their immediate question is going to be, well, why is that happening? And if you aren't looking at the open-ended response, I don't think you're going to be able to give them that answer. And so these are some of the outcomes, typical outcomes that we see from analyzing these open-ended responses. So it could be something like improved CX flow. Maybe agents need more training, improved FAQs and resources on somewhere like the website. Maybe part of a process needs to be automated to speed it up. We would implement change, or even as far as to product recalls or even product discontinuation. So you might be asking yourself, how do we go from seeing an NPS score rising and falling to those actual outcomes? And how do we bridge that gap and be able to almost like translate the raw data? And so we use, and this is an example of our output, this is an insight card. And so you can see, and this is from your analysis, you can very, very easily and quickly give a brief overview of the insight. What are you seeing in the data? But then you're also able to back that up with the actual evidence. And that includes the metric. So in this case, we've got a relative difference score, 5.5 times more likely. But also you can see examples. So the topics that are coming up, delivery, damage, some examples of the phrases that are coming up as well. So not delivered, delivered late. And you can even see as far down as the word, so broken, for example, or late. And so this is essentially how we would go about streamlining from start to finish that flow of work. And so you can see over on the left-hand side, the customer data. So we can input your CSAT and NPS surveys. So a few examples of these: InMoment, Medallia, Qualtrics, SurveyMonkey. And then using relative flow, as I said, we're able to streamline that process through auto upload. We can then automatically prep the data ready for analysis and feed this into your data visualization tool. So we have recently launched integrations with Power BI and Tableau, which is very, very exciting. So what I'll do now is hand over to Alban, who can take you through Medtronic's NPS with relative insight.
Thank you, Liv. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect. So let's go to the first slide. So I'll first start to, I will depict our journey with NPS. So in healthcare, NPS came quite late into the game, and really looking after customer satisfaction is something that was not evident a decade ago. So I'm going to talk about last decade. So we started with really customer satisfaction, a decade ago. I want to say that we've chosen in our division in Medtronic Diabetes to put an anonymous survey. That's important because you could say that NPS surveys could be non-anonymous and have specific actions with these customers. We chose to have an anonymous survey because we believe that this anonymous survey is much more down to what people think. Yeah. So we have this customer satisfaction surveys that come. At some stage, it becomes quite important in our marketing community. So we actually set targets. So that was kind of 5 years ago. Now we have targets, and we have targets across different customer groups and across, different countries as well. So it's part now, I would say, on our quarterly business rhythm. And then beyond this, if you pick once more, it's really about the why. Yeah. Meanwhile, our division, Medtronic EMEA, really was exposed to moving from being in a monopoly down to facing many competitors, which is a very good thing for the market because people living with diabetes do benefit a lot from this. But from a marketing community, it's meant a lot in terms of understanding, how do we compare versus our competition? Yeah. Here I've put a word marketeers, because that journey that you're seeing now is not so evident for marketeers, for analytical people like me, moving that ladder. Climbing that ladder is easy. You're getting much more granular, but not for marketeers. And when you throw to marketeers the fact that a comment has appeared X more times that quarter versus previous quarter, it's not so evident for them to believe that it's something which is actually very important and they need to implement. So my message across that journey is that the marketeer will take time and will need to be, to buy into that journey. Okay, so that's where we're coming from. Now we're going to look at how our NPS survey itself has evolved across that journey. And this is our next slide. So if we're looking at the survey length, at the beginning, we were really listening to our marketing colleagues, and they were like, I need to know this and that. So we had that gigantic surveys with 50 plus questions. These questions were changing time to time as well. And you see how the participation evolved below that. Actually, that participation graph should be moved slightly to the left. Only the green bars on the right should be below the 5. Okay, just visually, if you keep that. But you see, we start that survey, it was Q2 2015, very high response rate, but very quickly you see you have survey fatigue. I think that's the first message here. And then when you go you reach survey fatigue, here you're around the 5% at some stage. And the 5% you see, it's very flat. We can't make that change. And at some stage, we move down to the number of questions to be moved from products, versions, and features. So everything you can think of, at the beginning, down to features, service, and segments. So we try to segment our customers. And with the help of relative insights, we can actually only ask for satisfaction and comments, because in comments analysis, you find a lot. Yeah, so you don't need to ask all of these questions that really create survey fatigue, and you get much better response rate. And you see how in the last 3 quarters, our response rate has really climbed significantly, because now we are 11%, I believe. So that's the first thing with free text field analysis, is that you can really streamline your questionnaires and make them much more, and make your customers answer them, basically, much better. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second, next slide is about 2 use cases that really could help us in the markets. The first one is around the nurses. So we're talking about one country here specifically. And so we have our interaction with nurses. We have our staff of nurses in Medtronic who visit hospital nurses. And you see, we ask the NPS question to nurses, and you see it varies from 20 up to 40. And then COVID comes. We no longer see the nurses. We have quite a lot of interactions, I would say virtual interactions with physicians, but with nurses much less. And our NPS drops a lot. When we read the comments from nurses in that specific country, they tell us, come and see us again. You're seeing our physicians again, post-COVID. You're not seeing us, come and see us again. Very strong signal. So we do that with that country. So they implement a program to do that. And you see how the NPS grew again. I think for us, it was really a way we could prove internally to our marketeers that implementing, something very concrete does bear fruit. Yeah, and I must say that this comment around "come and see us again" was not coming out of questions that we had designed. Right? It was really purely statistical analysis of the free text field. So that's really, I would say, was really the start of when relative insights became part of our NPS really journey. So that's the number one. Next one is concerns around sustainability. Here we mean by sustainability all of the waste that is generated. Yeah. And I've pulled here a graph from a tool from Relative Insight called Heartbeat. So Heartbeat looks at themes across time. And you see that early already from our promoters, very interesting, the promoters, so the happy customers of Medtronic in 2022 already tell us there's a lot of waste with your product. Yeah. But they are promoters, right? So we don't pick it actually, because we are not looking at the negative comments from promoters. Then it comes up in the detractor comments a year later, and we looked at detractor negative comments much more than promoter comments. But you see, we've lost 1 year. It's a pity, although it was already significant before. And now we can catch the fact that sustainability is a rising trend. Is it making a difference in the decisions of people? I'm not sure, but it's a rising trend that becomes more important at every new wave that we are launching. So sustainability, falls back to the marketing agenda, I would say, as what can we do with this? Yeah. Meanwhile, what had happened as well is that we have implemented at Medtronic in some countries some scheduled delivery. Yeah. So people with diabetes no longer need to order. They have a scheduled delivery, and that means many boxes coming to their home. Yeah, and we have this specifically in this country. We have that coming up. Yeah, we would have been able to look at this issue ourselves. We would have never thought, certainly to ask a question about number of boxes they receive at home. We all receive so many boxes. Yeah, but for these people, it matters. And so really going through the text analysis, brought us that theme as being statistically significant and looking at how we can work on it. So this is really, what we could do. It's only 2 examples. We have a few more. A half an hour ago, we were with Liv and her colleague looking at the recent data. And we have other actionable things that we can work through. So really, it's really a way that you reduce the volume of what you're asking, the volume, and you increase a lot the quality out of what you get. So for us, for the moment, is a very good journey. The only not caveat, but the only watch out is really to bring your marketeers across that. Because large language models is a science, but it's a black box for most. And marketeers, they don't understand it. They will probably never understand it. So they are not sure about, the reliability of this methodology. Yeah. So they need to be, they need to see some key actions. They need to see that it has an impact into the overall marketing cycle, I would say, to be convinced, and that takes some time. Yeah, certainly in healthcare, in Medtronic, it took some time, but now I think we are at this stage where we can really benefit from it and have an entire marketing organization using these insights. That's my conclusion, Liv, for now.
Awesome, thank you so much, Alban. Really, really, really interesting stuff, and I'm really excited to see kind of the actions that come off the back of today's playback as well, which you mentioned. So yeah, no, thank you so much for that. So what we'll do now is we'll go to a Q&A. So this is your opportunity to ask any questions to both myself and to Alban about everything that we've taken you through today. So I'll open up the floor to questions. Let's have a look.
Yeah, we have a few. I can recognize one of my colleagues, actually.
Okay, great. So the first question that we have got: does Relative Insights only analyze CSAT and NPS surveys? So the answer is no. So we analyze a really broad range and I'll keep it for now to the world of CSAT and NPS, just because the possibilities are, I mean, we would be here for quite a while, I would say. So surveys are obviously like a great place to start, but we can look at things like call center transcripts as well. So understanding when you get a text from EE, you've been on the phone to them for a while, and then you can score that and give an open end. So we can look at that. We can also look at what's driving kind of the transcript side as well. Trying to think of a few others. Yeah, so maybe social media potentially as well. We could look at. We could even look at online reviews. So if you don't have your own primary data, we can look at open source online reviews such as Google reviews, and we can analyze those as well. So I hope that helps. So next question.
I can maybe take it. We run an NPS. We don't. I know. Oh, no, are the inputs and outputs on the last slide the only ones you work with? So in terms of the inputs, it's very simple now. We are asking the satisfaction question. How likely are you to become a Medtronic? Yeah, someone living with type 1 diabetes. So that's and then a comment. Why did you score this way? And then in terms of the outputs, we have many more. We have many themes, but the themes, we don't select, we don't cherry pick the themes that rise up. We are really asking the methodology to run it. So the themes, arise through statistical significance, and we only dive into those ones rather than the opposite. And that's something I didn't mention before. That's before we were doing what you were saying, Liv, that we were actually categorizing manually, the comments, which is very cumbersome. You can always do it, I think, but it's very cumbersome. But the thing is that you're only selecting what you're looking for. And I think that's a big bias with verbatims. If you don't have a large language model that does that for you. And I must say that I'm quite amazed by the thing that your algorithm in Relative Insights speak, because they are very meaningful to our business. Although they would be very generic in terms of the terms used in another context, but in our context, they are meaningful and they come up. So that's, I think, the real power of that you no longer are biased with your analysis, and you're told. You're told. I hope it answers the question. You leave, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Awesome. Okay, great. So moving on to the next question. So we run a NPS program, but we don't do much with the open-ended responses as it takes too long. Is there any way to speed this up? Absolutely. So when we have our initial conversations and we speak about kind of like how people have been going about analyzing the open ends, one of the most common answers is that they are manually going through and either doing some very kind of like rudimentary coding, or as far as to like they are literally just reading every single response. So through Relative Insight, it removes the need for any sort of manual coding, which is awesome. And what we're seeing is that we're starting to be able to kind of like speed up that process by as much as 50% sometimes, which is really exciting to see. So you can do the things in your day-to-day that are more exciting than having to read through lots of responses.
Yeah, and can I add to this? Yeah. So
sure.
Once you start using the methodology, you will actually use the time you were using to basically read through before. You will use it more into diving into some of the topics. Yeah. So you have a topic that arises, and then you'll ask the next question: which country, which segment, which so you get much more granular and then much more actionable as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. So the next question is, how typical is this use of relative insights? Do lots of brands use the platform like this, or is it only Medtronic? Great question. And the answer is, we see lots and lots of brands wanting to do analysis like this. And we're seeing actually a really interesting trend of the conversation, like really picking up, especially over the past 6 months or so. There seems to be a real shift in the need to understand what's driving NPS and CSAT. Okay, great. So moving on to the next question, how is this different than plugging in the open ends into ChatGPT and analyzing as such? I guess from my perspective, there's two things. I mean, using ChatGPT isn't a secure way of analyzing text data. So if you have any sort of sensitive information in surveys, it's probably not the best shout. Alongside that, as I said before, it's going to give you some very like overarching themes in the data, but it won't necessarily tell you why those have been picked out. And so when you're presenting to your stakeholders internally, probably one of the two of the key questions that you're going to get are, why did you come to me with these specific points? You don't necessarily have that why. And also it's really challenging to get really solid metrics that the relative insight platform would provide. So you'd be essentially missing those as well.
And then you wouldn't be able to slice and dice, because your comments are actually, you can bring so many attributes to a comment, you know, a segment, a country, a time. Yeah, there's many things you can attach to it. And in ChatGPT, you wouldn't be able to do that work. So I think that's really how it makes it actually actionable, I believe. Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that.
So next one, I'll let you answer this one.
So today we produce NPS scores reports. Would it be possible to produce live score or live verbatim analysis? So the answer with our Power BI integration and with relative flow is that we'd be able to get almost real-time analysis of the open ends and feed them automatically into your visualization tool. So yeah, the answer is yes. Moving on to the next one. What's your thoughts on asking NPS quarterly versus 6 months or annually? Alban, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are many elements into this. First is the base you're tapping into, because survey fatigue, even though you get down to 5 questions, still exists. And we've seen that. So we've moved away from quarterly to half yearly in some occasions to avoid that. So that's the first thing. I think it's really your survey participation is the first criteria. Now, it really depends on if you have the beauty to do it, even why not monthly. Yeah, it's about what you can do with it. There's no point generating thousands of words and not being able to action them. So I think it's more your organization, how your organization is able to concretely make sense of this. I know some companies, not in healthcare, who really look at their NPS. I think it's every quarter, but it's the meeting. Everybody gets around the NPS and comments and takes actions. And then you have the whole flow of marketing and commercial activities out of that. So I think that's really what matters there.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just to add to that, add to your point. So yes, the question of 6 months or annually definitely does come up. And we also have questions around actually even more frequently than quarterly. So as Alban said, monthly, but so we work with a lot of businesses in the kind of like fast food industry, and they need to be able to use their NPS to spot problems on a restaurant level very, very quickly before they become a problem. So if there is a problem with hygiene, for example, they need to act on that within days potentially, rather than waiting up to a quarter to make those changes, because they can be quite problematic by then. Awesome. So
can probably take this one.
Yeah,
when
Alban.
how granular were the insights? Was it explicitly to do with packaging or materials, for instance? So it was quite explicit because the beauty with this is that it's really common language. Yeah. So people were talking about two things: too many boxes. The way we ship them makes that too many boxes. Number one. Number two, boxes too big for their content. We need to rationalize our supply chain, right? So we don't have 100 types of different boxes, I guess, in our distribution centers. And sometimes you would have a very small piece of equipment in too big of a box. And that was the second comment. So yes, it was quite explicit. And the second thing is that we could spot as well from which country it was most prevalent. So we could link that with some of the activities we have in terms of delivery. So it was really meaningful for us. Yeah.
So the next question, what can one get with relative insight that one cannot do with large language models or do easily with a large language model? I'd like to come back to this question. So I can't actually see who asked this, but if you'd like to get in touch, I think it'd be good to dive into this in more detail offline. And then the final question that we have, so when it comes to social media, how is relative insight different from social listening tools like TalkWalker and Tagger? So yeah, another really, really great question. And I guess with TalkWalker, I haven't used it explicitly very, very recently, but from my understanding, it's a case of there's a very kind of like rudimentary text analytics component to their platform, which it will tell you kind of like very, very briefly in things like word clouds, using frequency, what's happening. But we take that one step further with our other metrics, such as verbatim percentage and relative difference, to really kind of like understand the key nuances rather than those words that are just very, very frequently appearing. The other side of it is that because the platform can take in not just social media data, you're able to actually stitch data sources together through the platform. So yes, social media might be one part of the puzzle, but what about the surveys that you're putting out to your customers potentially? And what about call center transcripts? These are things that we can start to piece together with the platform and to deliver a singular report rather than lots and lots of different reports from lots of different places. And I think that is all of our questions. Okay, brilliant. Well, yeah, that is pretty much everything from us. I would like to firstly thank Alban for sharing his presentation today. It was really, really interesting, and I'd like to also thank everyone for joining us. Obviously, if there are any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of our team, and we'll be in touch shortly. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your days.
Thank you very much. Bye bye, everyone.